Morning glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Joined now by Ben Domenech, editor-at-large at The Spectator, Fox News contributor extraordinaire. Good morning, Ben.
Good morning, Hugh. Good to be with you as always.
Ben, before I tell you what I think, I just want to put the premise out. The past 2 months, and especially the past 2 days, have revealed a lot of truths about a lot of people, maybe the last 2 weeks as well, if we throw in the colleges. What do you make of what we're watching in real time following 10/7, and especially yesterday?
Well, look, I think that one of the things that we've seen coming out of this whole experience is that a lot of liberals, a lot of people who thought that they were sort of dealing with a minor trend, let's say, against Israel within their ranks, they've been disabused of that notion. And they've been disabused of it in real time in ways that I think have made very clear that there were a lot of fellow travelers in their midst, a lot of progressives that have been part of their coalition over the past several years who simply can't be trusted when it comes to whether they're going to take the side of American interests at home and abroad, or whether they're going to, frankly, turn against us in a very open way. It's something that I think it's frankly sad to see. You don't really want to see people kind of disabused of all these notions that they may have had about, well, we may believe, slightly different things, but we're all Americans. We all, sort of march to the same drum in the same way. We all respect the flag, that kind of a thing. And we all, have a shared belief in our allies. And that's something that I just think has gone away. And it's been something that I think has been very rough for a lot of people within the left coalition, particularly, obviously, liberal Jews within that coalition.
Amen. Now, Ben, frankly, the second thing, though, that's the reality of the Democratic Party. I also think we have forgotten how wrong the Biden administration can be on everything. It's as though we trust them to be correct on dealing with Israel, and we should not underestimate their ability to get every single decision wrong every single day. And yesterday, Jake Sullivan getting rebuked publicly by Gallant. After they leaked to the New York Times, Israel has 3 more weeks. Then Jake Sullivan leaks, we had very intensive discussion. Gallant comes out and slaps him around a little bit in public and says, this is going to go on for months and months. And then Joe Biden says, be more careful. How incoherent is the White House?
Well, look, I mean, one of the things that's interesting about this White House, and I believe that this is something that we really should take away from this experience with Joe Biden, is we're dealing with someone who was in the Senate for such a long time that he still operates in a lot of ways as if he is just a senator on the Foreign Relations Committee, as if he is someone who is, not kind of in charge of things in the same way that he is on a day-to-day basis, or is at least supposed to be in his
good observation.
Job.
And the only thing worse than that is being vice president.
Yeah, well, I mean, warm bucket of spit and all that. But I think it's one of those things where, you have the ability in a Senate office to have kind of disagreements with other senators, to speak out of turn a little bit, to, have interaction with the press that go, one way or the other. But it's not the same thing as being the commander in chief. And I think that in his current job, we have never seen that commander in chief role as being one that he actually embraced, adopted, and demanded from the different people who actually work for him and who need to sound the same notes and not speak out of turn in these ways.
Ben, do you listen to the Commentary podcast?
I do occasionally. I have to be honest with you. I listen almost entirely to sports and comedy podcasts. It's like my escape. But I do occasionally listen to it.
Yeah, in the morning I listen to Times of Israel and Commentary, and then I go to Browns and Cavaliers and Guardians talk. So I'm like you. But yesterday, John Podhoretz said on Commentary, there is no two-state solution. And I'm paraphrasing here. People can listen to it for themselves. And everyone who knows anything about anything understands there is no two-state solution in the foreseeable future. Much needed dose of reality. What do you think of that?
Well, I agree with John, and I think that he's very smart when it comes to these issues. And I think that, there's this whole experience has only made clear that that's not something that we can go down. And it's removed, frankly. I mean, Walter Russell Mead has made the point in the pages of the Wall Street Journal that the actual ramifications of 10/7 is the strengthening of Israel's hand. And frankly, the removal of this as even a possibility in the near future. But I think that one of the things that we are going to see going forward is there's going to be more and more demands, I think, from the American people to have clarity when it comes to foreign policy issues before you get into the presidency. And that's something that I think, it's so incredible to think back. It's often cited, that in 2000 we never had a conversation about Iraq and Afghanistan. In this past election, we never had a foreign policy debate because of the whole mishigas with that C-SPAN moderator who, had the audacity to, reach out publicly to Anthony Scaramucci on Twitter and then lied about it. So that whole thing that happened there, meant that we never had a foreign policy debate and we never had a lot of these questions answered. Frankly, I think that we have gotten into this presidency now by accident almost. It was people revolting against what they hated about the Trump presidency, and now they have lived through 3 years of this experience, and they have seen all the downsides of putting someone as incompetent and wrong as Joe Biden in this position. We've seen the consequences of putting all the people around him in these positions, and frankly, it's something that I think Americans just don't like. If Joe Biden wanted his poll numbers to go up, he would have fired every single person in the administration who showed up to protest in front of the White House the other night. He would have just fired them. And that's the kind of thing that I think Americans can unite around. And it's just, it's a rump part of the progressive coalition that they needed to deal with a long time ago. They haven't. And now we're living through the experience of having them be, even if they're a small number with they have a huge megaphone and they are very prominent within the coalition.
Now, Ben, I don't want to make too much out of the White House Christmas video because it's just stupid. But it comes out at a serious time. And I'm wondering, do you think anybody in the White House ever talks to anybody outside of the Beltway about anything?
Well, I mean, it's just incredibly tone deaf, but it's also kind of an indication of they're in such a bubble. They've been protected by the media for so long. They're so used to basically having every decision that they make justified by their allies in the media that they can do something this silly and stupid and just to kind of get away with it, or assume that they're going to get away with it because they don't have anybody in the room who's saying, hey, guys, I don't think that this is the best timing. I don't think that this is the best idea. And also just, looking back, Hugh, it's like, the media flipped out when Melania had red trees. It's like
that leads me to this.
Completely different standard.
Have you read the Economist story when the New York Times lost its way yet? It's 73 pages.
So yes, Hugh. I lit a candle. I put on. I lit some incense. I sat down. I centered myself, and I read all of it. I will say, and I actually had a good interaction the other day with James Bennett about it. I knew James during, or had been. He was kind of my interlocutor whenever I would write for the Times. I would reach out to him, and I just did so on like a half dozen occasions during his tenure. And it is one of the most damning things I think you can read. And I've said to people, I know it's a slog, but
oh my gosh,
you need to read this.
James Bennett is the former opinion page editor of the New York Times, who quit after Senator Cotton published a hard-hitting op-ed, which one would have expected in the paper of record, but became the occasion of revolution and deterioration in the Times quality. And this opus, this book, is a slam at the Sulzberger. It's what? How do you describe it, Ben?
Well, I think it is kind of a documentary of a place losing its mind, and I think that in Bennett's case, the fact that he was willing to put all this down in a very personal way, and also to kind of detail his own journalistic experience and how much he sort of went through to get to this point in his career, and then to learn that there's this fantastic little bit where he says, I felt like I was arguing against people who, were the Japanese soldiers, who were hiding out on an island that didn't know that, the war had been over for years. And then I realized that I was that soldier. I was fighting for these old values of, let's call it liberalism.
Well, let's call it the two-state solution, which doesn't exist anymore. It is. When we come back, I'm going to talk with Ben about what I raised with Sonny last hour, which is the reality that isn't real, that people are operating with, whether it comes from Fauda or from other Netflix shows or just from the Beltway. The Republican presidential candidate who embraces realism, I think Ben just referred to this, just goes with realism. This is the world as it is, not as we want to pretend it to be, will win in a walk in November. I don't care if it's Trump or Haley or DeSantis or Christie. They will win in a walk if they just repeat after me, we will stand by Israel. The world is a tough and dangerous place.
Do you want Israel to scale back its assault on Gaza by the end of the year? Do you want them to tone it down, move to a lower intensity phase?
I want them to be focused on how to save civilian lives, not stop going after Hamas, but be more careful.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. That was President Biden yesterday. Shortly after that, and after Jake Sullivan's on and off the record comments in Israel yesterday, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, also former director of the CIA, posted on Twitter X, nothing about what Israel has done has been indiscriminate. President Biden is simply wrong, and his comments are music to the ears of Hamas. I'm joined by Ben Domenech, editor-at-large of The Spectator, Fox News contributor. Ben, I agree with Secretary Pompeo, and before we went to break, I made this statement. I just want to test it on you. Whoever is the Republican nominee, if they run on clarity about evil in the world, just clarity, there are very bad people in the world, and we have to take it seriously, they will win in a walk. What do you think?
Well, the only reason I'll say that they won't win in a walk is that I do think that there's so many Americans, here at home who are going to be activated on a number of different domestic policy fears that I think it's going to be a very competitive, very close race. But I do think that, clarity on foreign policy, offering that to the people will do a lot to, I think, remove any advantage, any remaining trust, and I don't know who would trust him at this point, from the Biden side of the ledger on the foreign policy issue. When he ran, in 20, a lot of the media was able to make the claim that he represented a return to, quote unquote, stability or normalcy in the world. That he would represent somebody who, wouldn't be engaged in Twitter fights or something like that people were worried was going to lead to nuclear war, which is actually something that happened under Trump, believe it or not. And I think that that's something that they could claim back then, and they can't claim anymore because we've seen what the Biden foreign policy is like. It is completely incoherent. It doesn't in actuality support our allies. It doesn't meet our commitments around the world, and it's kind of spastic. And like I said before in the last segment, it's something that I think is much more in keeping with a senator shooting from the hip than a commander in chief who has a clear idea of what he wants to achieve.
And in the meantime,
very important.
The border is completely out of control, and I just assume. This is just Hugh Hewitt here. I don't know any. I haven't had a security clearance since 1989. I just assume the Iranians and the Chinese are pretty good at espionage and that they notice our border is open, Ben. Do you agree with me on that? Because there's a story about a Russian today in the Wall Street Journal working out of West Germany, stealing $2 billion and funding Russian ops until he escaped into Russia. They're pretty good at this.
They are pretty good at this. And look, this is the thing that I think that people don't pay attention to when it comes to the border. We talk a lot about the people who come over, the migrants who actually go through the system, get kicked out of it, get handed off to NGOs, end up, in New York and that kind of thing. That's the process being broken and everything else related to that. What we don't talk about as much is the fact that we are about to pass. We are on the cusp of passing 2 million known gotaways under Joe Biden since he took office in 2021, which is not only, a historically unprecedented number, but just think about what those 2 million people who we don't know that much about contain. Those are the people who don't want to go through the system. They don't want to get a court date. They don't want to have any kind of interaction with NGOs. They want to be able to come over here and not have any kind of governmental record of who they are or where they came from. Those are the people that we have to worry about. Okay, those are the people we have to worry about, Hugh, and there are going to be consequences for the fact that they are here because there are going to be people in that bunch that wish America true harm who are going to act at some point. And I don't have any kind of confidence in our government, in our law enforcement resources, in the FBI, to be able to be prepared to track all of them, know who they are, and be prepared when they eventually decide to do something.
All right, so Ben, yesterday. Police and authorities in Germany, Denmark, and the Netherlands arrested a whole bunch of Hamas terrorists who were planning massive attacks in Europe. And I think every day that the FBI spends on anything except counterterrorism is kind of a wasted day. I know they've got to do organized crime.
I mean, you don't think that those pro-life protesters are something that we have to worry about?
And the Catholic Church, I just don't. And I think Jack Smith is the same thing. They're all taking their eye off the ball. But do you think that understanding is settled on the Democratic Party, that at least it's a political problem and they've got to make changes at the border?
I think that this, I don't know if you saw this Reid Hoffman-funded mega donor on the Democratic side, poll that looked at this, but it was making the point this week that if Joe Biden tomorrow basically embraced the entire slate of Republican policies on the border, his numbers would go up.
Yes.
Because more voters favor that policy than are on his side on this issue. I think this is the loudest portion of his coalition, the progressives in his party, having an outsized role in determining where policy goes. If he would simply to embrace these center-right, not even conservative, I would say, just center-right, policies on the border, then it's something that actually would benefit him. It would benefit his party, and it would benefit the American people, because we would have a border that was more secure. But he's not doing it only because they're worried about those, that progressive vote in Michigan that everybody's warning about, that he's worried is going to deny him a second term.
I don't understand what they're doing. I've listened, as I mentioned, the Commentary podcast is daily, simply befuddled by the politics of this White House. And they're just underestimating the incompetent level that this group of people can reach. Ben Domenech, thank you.